Hello, my name's Gavin. This is Genre Books, and this is week 20 of the Read What You Own challenge. The challenge to read 100 books from these shelves before I buy a new one. In the wider challenge, we have seen both success and a fallen leader in the last week. Success with Greg from Another Bibliophile Reads, who has completed his challenge, and he was doing what I think is the more difficult challenge on page count, 25,000 pages read. Congratulations, Greg. And commiserations to Criminoli, who has bowed out on 67 books out of the 100. So I think you still get the Read What You Own challenge 50 titles medal, but there you go. For my own part, I have made some progress this week through some quick reads, for which I make no apologies. I'll begin with two art books, both from the Faden Colour Library. Vermeer by Martin Bailey. Who doesn't like Vermeer? I think I was possibly influenced by reading the Rijksmuseum book a couple of weeks ago, and remembered how much I liked these paintings and realised I hadn't read this book, and I now have. Yes, there are lots of pictures, but that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. There's enough text in here to make me feel happy in counting this as a full-on book to mark off on the challenge, and I get to look at pictures like this. I follow that up with Magritte by Richard Calvocaresi. I like Magritte. I love my surrealists. There were some things in here which I hadn't truly appreciated. I didn't realise for how long Magritte was acting as a commercial artist, but now absorbing that fact, a lot of other things about some of his paintings around that time make a lot more sense. So again, enlightening and counts towards the challenge. I will talk on this channel when I get the chance, and if anyone will listen, about how much I like Jonathan Coe. And I read one of his early books this week, which I had not read before. This is, I think, his third novel. It's called The Dwarves of Death. Now that sounds perhaps a little fantasy laden, but it isn't. This is a book set in the late 80s London and in the possibly less successful side of the music scene. Our protagonist is a struggling musician and composer who finds himself embroiled in a sordid tale of abuse, drugs and murder. There are, as you would imagine from a Jonathan Coe book, some lighter moments in the book and some funny dialogue. This is tightly plotted, a nice twist, not a lot of wasted space in the book, and quite a brief book. And if you've been in bands, then I think you'll find a lot here to relate to as well. And yes, I agree, Andrew Lloyd Webber is awful. As good as the dialogue is in The Dwarves of Death, it is not good in this next book. I'm still on Goodreads, and I have to say this is the first 2-star rating I've given for a book in some time. This was below par. I don't know if it's below par for the author, Luan Ranzetta, but Luan Ranzetta isn't the author's real name. It was Valerie Ranzetta, who I can't find any information about, other than she actually wrote 4 books for Digit. This one came out in 1963, The Night of the Death Rain. It's a book that really doesn't live up to the promise of the title. There is a big storm. And our heroes work at the meteorological office, where they are investigating the odd atmospheric conditions. They've also, for some weird kind of foresight, built some almost indestructible glass shelters where they take their families, and when the death rain hits, they find themselves transported somehow to an asteroid orbiting Jupiter, populated by a race of people who we don't really get to know all that much. It seems a little bit cruel and a little bit bureaucratic. There's a lot in this story that doesn't hang together, and it doesn't help that the dialogue is so leaden. A small fragment here. She flared up angrily. Well, someone's got to talk about things, haven't they? We never know what you're cooking up in the compound. We might all be blown up in our beds and you'd still say we mustn't talk about it. Don't you care about anything that happens to your family, to Linda, Bob, and the younger children, Peter? It turns out that even Peter only have 3 children. It's odd that she would name check 2 of them and leave the other one nameless, considering she turns up as a character in the rest of the book. There are a legion of issues with this. I will be wary about picking any of these up if I see them in the wild. Any others from Luan Ranzetta. This is quite a rare book because there was only 1 printing, but sometimes you realise why there was only 1 printing. After my experience with The Night of the Death Rain, it was with a little more than normal trepidation that I embarked on The Unending Night by George H. Smith, who wrote science fiction novels, not to be confused with George O. Smith, who did the same thing. I'm not sure whether I've read a George H. Smith before, so I didn't know quite what I was getting myself into, but it's a small book. It wouldn't take me long, so if it turned out to be not great, at least it would be over soon. In the end, I thought it was pretty good, and I wish it had been longer, because the main failing here is that the ending is incredibly abrupt. Everything is resolved within the space of a page and a half, and that ought not to have happened. The premise, again, is science going mad, this time more man-made than the Night of the Death Rain. 2 huge reactors, one on Earth, one on Mars, are created and about to be put into full operation. The reactors are the brainchild of Lee Rilke, a fine upstanding scientist, and his brother Lance Rilke, who has taken over the construction and the company that is building these reactors, and is now dismissive and increasingly dismissive of the concerns Lee is raising about the safety margins not being good enough. As you can imagine, things go wrong, and one brother will not listen to the other. Lance Rilke is under the influence of another character in this book, Christy Conrad. And I was probably about 30-40 pages into this when I realised that Christy Conrad was a fairly thinly veiled caricature of Ayn Rand. Now, oddly enough, this is the second video in a row I have recorded where I get to say how ridiculous Atlas Shrugged is, and I'm grateful for the opportunity. Christy Conrad is a villain cut from Randian cloth. She is the embodiment of the philosophy, call it philosophy, objectivism, which Rand came up with for Atlas Shrugged. And it takes it to the logical, silly conclusion. And, no real spoilers, doesn't end well. George H. Smith is not an Ayn Rand fan. He does, however, overcompensate for the massive sprawling repetition that occurs in Atlas Shrugged by making this book all too brief. I read this in one and a bit sittings. Very readable, quite funny, but with a lot of action as well. It's not without its faults. There is another character here, an English scientist, a female English scientist, who is constantly told that she is not enough of an expert in certain fields, and emotional because she is a woman. She's the only person at the table with a Nobel Prize, and the rest of them seem emotional enough, but in, just different emotions. All that pales into insignificance with the approach of Mars. Yes, the reactors went wrong. The reactor on Mars blew up all the colonists that are on Mars, and Mars is now headed to Earth. What can we do? If you are the Randian in the room, you decide this is a great opportunity just to let everyone die and the strong survive. The remaining 2 books I read were both in the same volume. I was initially going to count them as one, but they are 2 quite distinct works. They are The Story of Atlantis and The Lost Lemuria, both by W. Scott Elliott, who was a Scottish nobleman and pseudoscientist of the late 19th, early 20th centuries. These books were written for the Theosophical Society, and I'll be talking about these in more depth in another video, as they will be forming part of the Atlantis and Lemuria sections of my Project Rabbit Hole project, where I'm talking about things like Atlantis, Lemuria, lost civilizations, Banksian fantasy, etc., etc., etc. Reading pseudoscience can, when you have the right subject, be a bit of fun. I'm sure it's not fun for the author in some cases, and Scott Elliott's earnestness has longer legs than my sense of humour. But there is some interesting stuff in here. More, I think, about how pseudoscience tries to make itself believable. There are plenty of instances, especially in the second of these books, where an established professor's lectures to the Royal Institution on continents and what might previously have been the shape of land masses is cited and quoted and then followed up immediately by saying, of course, the people who lived on the continents at the time soon lost their astral third eye because of the development of their pineal glands. And you've got to almost applaud the audacity of the cognitive leaps that occur in some of these works of pseudoscience. It's a rabbit hole within a rabbit hole, this one. As part of Spring into Adventure, I'm going to be reading some more about Tibet and some more philosophical works from Helena Blavatsky. Let's see how that goes. Certainly another one of Blavatsky's works, not the one I'm intending to read, is liberally quoted in Scott Eliot, so it might be another thing I have to add to that monolithic TBR. Some very brief books this week, and like I say, I make no apologies. At this stage I am just itching to complete, and I'm nearly there. The Lost Lemuria was title number 90. I am already reading titles 91 and 92, hopefully to finish those within the week. That includes A Murder is Announced by Agatha Christie, and again on ebook I'm still reading Deluge by S. Fowler Wright. This is a book I'm reading on my phone rather than proper ebook, and one I am snatching a chapter of every now and then when I'm stuck at a train stop or a bus stop. I also have to read in the next week my next instalment of the 1001 Nights, which will not count towards a challenge. That's quite annoying. I'm also reading The Magic Labyrinth, a buddy read with Greg from Another Bibliophile Reads, which with its 500 page length also isn't going to help me a lot, but only 10 titles to go, so I will see if I can fit in some quick reads alongside these. Until next time, bye.